All right, so let's get back to this whole idea of the Leviathan spirit and the Jezebel spirit, okay, and also the Python spirit is another one. So, is it okay to name these demons in this way? Because the Bible never explicitly says that there is a Leviathan spirit or there is a Jezebel spirit, okay, and so because of that, there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, well, it's not biblical to say, to rebuke the spirit of Jezebel or the Leviathan spirit." So, but I believe that it is biblically accurate to do that. And so I'm going to explain to you from the Bible why I believe that we can use these kinds of ideas to identify certain kinds of demonic behaviors. Okay, even though the Bible never says a Jezebel demon, okay, or a Leviathan demon, okay, they still are very, very clear demonic behaviors. Okay, so let's talk about the Jezebel spirit. Okay, so Jezebel was an evil queen. She was the wife of King Ahab of Israel in the Old Testament. She was extremely evil. She was murderous. She was idolatrous. She brought the worship of Baal and Asherah to Israel. So she was just a wicked, wicked person. She persecuted God's prophets. She most definitely was possessed by demons. Okay, I don't think there's any question about that. And so it makes sense that we would identify demons who manifest similar behaviors to this wicked woman, as that we would identify them as Jezebel spirits, right? And now here's even more proof. Jesus himself does this same thing. So in Revelation 1 and 2, if you remember, we just went over this several months ago, Jesus himself appears to John in Revelation 2, and he gives John messages to give to several churches of the time. And so the message that he gives to the Christian church in Thyatira, he rebukes this evil woman and he calls her a Jezebel. She's created all of this drama and done all these terrible things in the Christian church in the city of Thyatira. Okay. And so the woman's name is not Jezebel, but Jesus refers to her and identifies her as a Jezebel because her behavior is the same as the original wicked Jezebel. Okay, so Jesus is naming this behavior Jezebel. Okay, so I think that this gives us legitimate, biblically sound backup, okay, support of this practice of naming these kinds of demons. Okay, so let's talk about Leviathan spirit. Okay, so Leviathan comes from several passages in the Bible. Job 41 has this long passage where it describes this Leviathan, this immense, powerful, vicious sea creature with scales and fiery breath and great strength, kind of like a dragon. Okay, now Isaiah uses this Leviathan term symbolically to represent evil nations and leaders who oppress God's people. Okay, so Isaiah does the same thing. He refers to this evil demonic behavior that kind of matches the way this Leviathan monster would behave. And he refers to it as Leviathan. Okay, so he does the same thing. So if Isaiah calls evil behavior, if he calls it Leviathan, then we can do it too. So we do have legitimate, biblically sound support for this practice. Okay, I think that's very important to remember, to always check what we're doing with what the Bible says. And I also believe that many of the false pagan gods that we see in the Old Testament were also actually pagan, were demonic principalities. Okay, and so just like the comment that, Renee said just a minute ago, let's see if I can, she said Ashtoreth and Baal. Okay, so these were two of the old pagan gods in the Old Testament. Okay, and I believe that all of these probably were originally demons as well. They weren't just these wood statues. Okay, the people worshiped them because they were demons. They had power. There is a verse in Deuteronomy 32:17 that says they sacrificed to demons who were not God, to gods whom they had not known, new gods who came lately, whom your fathers did not know. So this passage in Deuteronomy implies that they were sacrificing to demons. Okay, so I believe we have backup support that all of these gods actually were demonic spirits, demonic principalities. So Baal, Molech, Asherah, Ashtoreth, Dagon, all of those. There's so many. So I do believe we have this biblical foundation. We can call out specific spirits and behavior. I believe it is a legitimate way to identify specific demonic behavior. I believe we can also call out demonic behaviors like addictions, lust, pridefulness, narcissism, unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, stuff like that. So in over the past decade, charismatic circles have, Christians have learned to be more specific in our spiritual warfare prayers. We've learned to call out very specific types of demonic behaviors using this naming system. And I do believe that it's powerful. I believe that it is much more powerful to command, say, a demon of addiction, or even more specifically, demon of addiction to heroin from somebody who has that addiction, rather than just some sort of generic prayer, please demon leave, right? I think the more specific you are, the more authority you can have over those demons. And I've got a biblical foundation for that as well. Okay, so there are many places where demons or spirits are given names in the Bible. Okay, so let me show you some of those. Okay, demon names. First of all, we know that the devil has a bunch of names. Lucifer, Beelzebub, Satan, and he's got some more as well. So obviously he's got names. Okay, then in Revelation 9:11, we are told of a demon whose name is Apollyon. He's also called Abaddon. Okay, so demons do indeed have names. Okay, and some other places in the Bible that names spirits. Okay, these are demons. In 1 Timothy, a spirit of fear. A spirit of infirmity, Luke 13. This particular story is where Jesus healed this old woman that was stooped over. Okay. In the Bible, Luke actually says that there was a spirit of infirmity had caused her to be sick, a spirit of sickness. Okay. There in Acts, we have the story of Paul casting out a spirit of divination from the young girl. Romans, Paul talks about a spirit of slavery. There's a lying spirit. Back in First Chronicles, the prophet Micaiah says that there has been a lying spirit has been sent into the prophets' mouths. Okay, and then there's the spirit of the Antichrist that John talks about in his letters. And now this isn't some sort of boogeyman that's coming in the future. So every time John talks about the Antichrist, he talks about an Antichrist spirit. So it's the name of a spirit, and he says that is already in the world today. And that's when he was writing 2,000 years ago. Okay, so that's just another one of these demonic principalities, these demonic spirits. Okay, so I believe that naming these demons gives us authority. It's exactly what Jesus did when he was talking to the demon-possessed man in Gerasene. Okay, that's why he first asked the demon, "What is your name?" So that then he could cast it out. It gives us authority if we can name these demonic behaviors.